So we started this challenge about a week ago. Can ChatGPT beat the S&P 500 over the next 30 days? Well, over the past week, while the S&P is down 2.7%, the portfolio it picked is up and up significantly. In fact, one of the stocks it picked is up 18% on the week. So we just might be onto something using ChatGPT to help us pick stocks that could outperform the market. So this is all part of a 30-day challenge we set up for ChatGPT with the goal of building a portfolio that could beat the market. No backtesting, no hindsight, just live picks based on a few carefully crafted prompts that I fed it, asking it to evaluate macro context, news flow, and fundamentals, as well as technicals in deciding what stocks should be part of the portfolio for the next 30 days. Well, we got the first set of results, and I've got to tell you, I was pleasantly surprised. I'll walk you through each of the 5 stocks, the ones that are outperformed and the ones that underperformed. We'll talk about what ChatGPT got right and where it underestimated risk. Plus, we'll walk through prompts to see whether we should double down on the stocks that we picked or swap one or two of them out for new opportunities. So let's dive in. So if you're new to our channel, here's a quick recap. I asked ChatGPT to build a 5-stock portfolio designed to beat the S&P over the next 30 days. So here are the 5 stocks it picked. EQT, a natural gas leader benefiting from AI-driven energy demand. Urban Outfitters, a retailer that currently has strong demand. GPI, a diversified auto retailer with strong financials. J&J, and Microsoft. So how did they perform? Well, let's find out. So here's a chart showing how all 5 stocks performed compared to the S&P. The S&P is way down here at negative 2.7% from the beginning of the challenge to now, and every single stock ChatGPT picked outside of one outperformed the S&P for the week. You have the largest outperformer, Urban Outfitters, at 17.7% for the week, while the S&P was down negative 2.7%. And then you have both J&J and EQT at plus 0.1%. You have Microsoft at negative 1.9%, so negative for the week, but still outperforming the S&P. And then the laggard was GPI, the UK-based auto dealership, down negative 3.5%. If we had an equal weighted portfolio of all 5 stocks, we would have been up 3.1% for the week, while the S&P was down negative 2.7% for the week. That's an outperformance of almost 5% for just one week. Now, we know not every week is going to be that way, so we're going to dive deep into each one of these stocks to determine why they underperformed, and if the reasons for which ChatGPT picked them still exist today, and if we need to swap out one or two of those stocks going forward. So we'll start with Urban Outfitters, which was our outperformer for the week, up by 17.7% for the week. So what drove that performance? Well, it reported earnings per share of $1.16, surpassing expectations of 81 cents. So that's a massive beat in earnings, and the stock popped as a result. Revenue increased by 10.7% to $1.33 billion, and it grew its same-store sales by almost 5%. So it also got some analyst love this week, with JP Morgan raising its price target to $78. Now, we're not gonna get this kind of pop every week, but it's telling that ChatGPT was able to identify a stock that had potential positive upside based on earnings outperformance, and that actually came true less than a week after it was picked. The next one we picked was J&J, up 2.2% for the week versus the S&P, which was down 2.7%. This one serves as a defensive anchor in the portfolio. EQT Corporation, which is a natural gas leader, down 0.1% for the week. No major news in the past week for this particular stock. From a fundamental perspective, the reasons that we picked it still hold today. Microsoft is a stable stalwart in most portfolios, and it didn't move too much in the past week. No major news from an AI perspective. Maybe some profit taken during the week. Now, Group 1 Automotive was down significantly in the past week. When ChatGPT picked this stock, it was the one that I was the most skeptical of, because why would an auto dealer do well in this economic climate? A climate of potential increasing interest rates, inflation, and selling a product that's largely discretionary. But we picked it anyway, and so far, it looks like not a great pick. But again, we're only a week into the 30-day challenge, so maybe some discipline is warranted here. Let's do some more digging to see if this or any of the other stocks we picked should be swapped out. And I'll walk you through the prompts to decide if that's the case or not. So I asked ChatGPT to evaluate each of the stocks based on updated fundamentals, technicals, macro context, and recent news. I also told it to provide us with a view on the stock over the next 3 weeks, which is the period for our 30-day challenge. For Urban Outfitters, it walked us through its earnings performance, which is the biggest driver for its stock currently. It gave us a view on its technicals, where its 50-day moving averages, 200-day moving averages, and its technical rating, according to ChatGPT, is a strong buy. Even after a 17.7% move, I think that might be something I would question, but we're going to trust ChatGPT on this. J&J had no recent new news. However, from a technical perspective, ChatGPT is suggesting that this might be one that we sell, because the stock is trading below all of its moving averages. Its 20-day moving average, its 50-day moving average, and its 200-day moving average. But it's not trading that far below them, and so it's trading at roughly roughly $152, where these averages range between 153 and 154. But we don't trade just on technicals. We're looking to find more than just one reason to sell a stock. The technicals alone aren't enough to push us to drop the stock from our 30-day challenge. So EQT is the next stock that we have on our list, and it still has a lot of major catalysts ahead. It's in the process of integrating two major acquisitions currently. It announced a 15% workforce reduction very recently. This is the one that grew its earnings by about 100%, and it's looking to grow next quarter's earnings by an equivalent amount. Most of its technical indicators are saying to buy, and the macroeconomic conditions are favorable to the stock, especially as the demand for power for data centers continues to increase. So it looks like no moves on that one. We're going to skip Microsoft. We're not going to make moves on Microsoft at the moment. It's a stock that's a good foundational piece for any portfolio, and it's unlikely that there would be market moving events between now and when this challenge is over, but we will keep checking each week. But let's look at GPI. This is one where we need to take a deep look to make a decision as to if we're going to keep this in the portfolio or if we're going to remove it. It's our largest underperformer, down 3.5% for the week. Its revenue was up 23% when it reported earnings a few weeks back. Its net income was only up 3.6%, and its gross profit was up 20.1%. So it's growing its gross profit and net income at a slower rate than its revenue. Now, in the past week, tariffs on European built goods has become a hot topic, and that's where things might be changing for the stock. So the potential US tariffs on imported vehicles from Europe, which is where Group 1 is based, could be a major headwind for the stock. 50% of its sales are from new car sales. So it does have a used car segment as well, which could insulate it from some of the tariffs associated with new car sales. And also 25% of sales come directly from its UK customers. So this is one that we are going to have to keep watching closely. So I asked ChatGPT to use the analysis that we've conducted thus far based on its fundamentals, macro context, news, and performance to evaluate which of the 5 stocks is most at risk of underperformance for the rest of the challenge. So which stock do you think it picked? Well, you guessed it, GPI. So GPI has a few risks associated with it currently. The first is operational. So it's in the midst of restructuring a few of its dealerships, and that's resulting in some closures. And then it's got a macro headwind of tariffs as well right now, especially as the US government looks to potentially place tariffs on goods coming into the US from Europe. The company has also suffered some downgrades from analysts as well. Not that that should be a big deal, but it's worth looking at. So looking at all 5 stocks, ChatGPT is either bullish or neutral on 4, but bearish on GPI. So the next question I asked ChatGPT was, for the purposes of the challenge, if it had to replace one of the stocks, in this case it would be GPI, what stock would it add to the portfolio? So it recommended LPL Financial holdings, and the way it got to that result was it looked at its recent earnings performance, which showed a 30% year-over-year increase in revenue and 22% rise in earnings. It just made an acquisition that it's absorbing. It's showing a lot of technical strength on its charts, and analysts continue to forecast strong growth for the stock. So rather than dump GPI just after a week, I suggest that we hold on to it and observe over the next week while we do our diligence on LPLA. But what would you do? Would you dump GPI and then add LPL to the portfolio? Or would you wait and watch? It's a 30-day challenge after all, and you can't always win them all. That's why we picked a 5-stock portfolio. Let me know what you would do. Comment below. Would you be adding LPL to the portfolio, or would you just let GPI ride? So here's what I'm watching for next week. Can Urban Outfitters continue to outperform, or did we just get the best of what it's going to be for the next 3 weeks? How about Microsoft? Will Microsoft continue to outperform and maybe turn into the green? Also, the S&P was down significantly this week by 2.7%. How do these stocks perform if the S&P starts to turn back up? That's also something to watch as well. So if you haven't seen the full build of the portfolio, down in the description is the video where I walk you step by step through how we build this portfolio. Also, like and subscribe to our channel so that you can continue to follow this challenge. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.